from the VON Newsline. This is the VON Major Newscast.
Good evening, I am Jarvis Bonner with your VON Major News package for today, Tuesday, September 4th, 2018. In our lead stories nationally, CFBC student wins Six Senses Range Development's internship in the Seychelles, and Nevis's premier says there is a shortage of nurses at the Alexandria Hospital. Regionally, Union rejects Trinidad Prime Minister's refinery purchase offer. Internationally, Russian warplanes bomb Syria's Idlib, and in sports, Jose Mourinho gets suspended jail sentence for tax fraud. We'll have the details to these and other stories after this message.
Another look.
Different from how you've seen it before.
Another look.
Takes an in-depth look into business, politics, science, technology, religion, and more.
Another look.
Featuring documentaries from the BBC, regional features, and local ones too.
Another look.
Every Monday at 3 p.m. on the Eastern Caribbean's Powerhouse.
Wrong.
Welcome back, and now on to the national news in detail. A student of the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College CFBC has been granted an internship opportunity in the area of hospitality. This was made possible through a partnership between the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College Hospitality Department, Range Developments, and Six Senses, which is expected to begin construction of a resort here in St. Kitts and Nevis this year. This internship will see Mr. Wycliffe Clark working in the Seychelles, an archipelago of 115 islands in the Indian Ocean off East Africa, for 6 months with a rotating schedule, which will allow the student to learn varying areas of the operations in the resort. Six Senses Range Developments has agreed to cover the cost of flights to and from the location, as well as training and accommodation. The selection committee reviewed all of the applications submitted, paying close attention to those who had exceptional recommendations, a strong academic background, and campus community involvement, following which a unanimous decision was made. In more national news,
at the context of employment, the Ministry of Health, we have a shortage of nurses at the institutional level that continues to be a real serious problem for us. A lot of youngsters coming out of school, please, if they're interested, we're looking for nurses, we're looking to assist people to train to become nurses. It is a noble profession, so we're saying to people who have that inclination, our caregivers, natural caregivers, please to come forward and assist us. And so this is an area where youngsters coming out of school we want to gravitate towards, because we need nurses.
Premier of Nevis and Minister of Health, the Honourable Mark Brantley. The Premier was at the time delivering his opening remarks during his press conference last Wednesday. He also mentioned the possibility of recruiting nurses from overseas.
I believe that the last discussion we had, we've been talking about going as far as the Philippines to see if we could recruit nurses. That is how desperate we are for nurses. Of course, when I became Minister of Health some years ago, we had brought in some retired nurses. I brought them back, and many of those have really given excellent service, yeoman service over the years that they worked, and they've come back to serve again. Naturally, they can't continue forever. And so we do need our people to go into the nursing profession, and I make this appeal for our youngsters especially, to look at that, boys and girls, young men and young women. We would like to see you involved in nursing.
The Honourable Mark Brantley. St. Kitts and Nevis's Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Dr. the Honourable Timothy Harris, today attended a one-day sixth special meeting of the Council for Finance and Planning COFAP in Barbados. The COFAP is responsible for economic policy coordination, financial and monetary integration of member states, and was held under the chairmanship of Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, the Honourable Gaston Brown. Issues relating to the contingent rights of citizens, such as healthcare, education, the single registration of international businesses, and the approval of automatic 6-month stays to CARICOM nationals, were among the issues addressed at that meeting. Prime Minister Harris was accompanied to the high-level meeting by Deputy Financial Secretary of the St. Kitts and Nevis's Ministry of Finance, Mr. Calvin Edwards. The 9th meeting of the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee on the CARICOM Single Market and the Economy CSME will also be held in Barbados on Wednesday, September 5th. In more national news,
the press release ISO did not include St. Kitts and Nevis. It did say that other countries might be included in the future, but St. Kitts and Nevis was not one of those at this point. But nevertheless, it is not a visa imposition, and we don't think that it will add any additional burden really to travel, other than going online and entering the information as necessary.
St. Kitts and Nevis's Minister of Foreign Affairs and Premier of Nevis, the Honourable Mark Brantley. Premier Brantley was responding to concerns that nationals of a number of countries will require new security clearance to travel to Europe effective 2021. Information released late in August by the Schengen Visa Information Site stated that effective 2021, European countries will be implementing a European Travel Information and Authorization System for 60 countries not in the European Union whose citizens now enter the EU without a visa. EU officials have blamed recent security concerns with terrorism and the migrant crisis for the move to better manage who is entering EU borders. Prime Minister Dr. the Honourable Timothy Harris announced at his press conference last Thursday the next sitting of the National Assembly. According to the Prime Minister, Parliament is at the heart of the representative democracy.
And in this regard, I am pleased to report that the next sitting of our Parliament will be on September 6, 2018. This will be the 7th sitting of Parliament for the year so far. In 2014, the Parliament met for a paltry 3 times while ignoring the motion of no confidence.
Prime Minister Dr. the Honourable Timothy Harris. Breastfeeding Week is being celebrated here in St. Kitts and Nevis this week, September 3rd to the 7th, 2018. The Ministry of Health has organized a week of activities under the theme Breastfeeding Foundation for Life. The Ministry of Health views Breastfeeding Week as a time for all to be mindful of the fact that breastfeeding is a natural and progressive building block that should immediately follow pregnancy and childbirth. This is to ensure that the nation's children will have the best chance at living strong, resilient lives where illnesses, diseases, and nutrition deficiencies are minimized during the entire life course. The highlights of these activities include video education via the Joseph N. France Hospital and other health facilities to be held on Wednesday, September 5th. Video education via digital screens in public places to be held on Thursday, September 6th, and breastfeeding community education Stop and Talk to be held on Friday, September 7th. And lastly, in our national news segment, Minister of Culture here on Nevis, the Honourable Eric Evelyn, will hold a press conference on Thursday, September 6th from 9:30 a.m. at the Cultural Village in Charlestown. During the forum, Minister Evelyn will report on the recently concluded Culturama Festival, which will include providing a financial statement. Media houses and members of the press corps will be afforded the opportunity to ask questions. The proceedings will also be carried live on Von Radio. And that's our national news segment. You can visit the website at www.vonradio.com as well as our social media pages at facebook.com and youtube.com. Regional news comes up next.
The Bank of Nevis Limited offers you sizzling hot vacation loans. Come and experience summer like never before with our easy-to-access summer vacation loan. Get up to $15,000 unsecured with up to 2 years to repay. Take a trip, experience the world, or participate in our very own Culturama. Enjoying your vacation has never been easier with a relaxing vacation loan from the Bank of Nevis Limited. My bank, your bank, our bank, the Bank of Nevis Limited, improving the quality of life. Like us on Facebook.
Oh, here we go. Summertime is here, you know.
Welcome back and now on to the regional news segment. Out of Trinidad, Oilfields Workers Trade Union OUTU President Ansel Rodgett has rejected Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley's offer to sell the state-owned Petrotrin refinery to the union, as well as the severance and early retirement packages offered to workers over 50 who will be affected by the impending shutdown. In an immediate response to Rowley's address to the nation on Sunday evening, Rodgett said the union felt vindicated by the Prime Minister's words. In a television interview on Sunday evening, Rodgett also questioned some of the figures quoted by Rowley and promised that he will be challenging it in the upcoming days. He also said that claims by Rowley that the union refused to meet with government were untrue and insisted that there should be public consultations on Petrotrin's future, specifically on the decision to shut down the refinery. On Monday, Rodgett accused Rowley of already having a potential buyer for the Petrotrin refinery. On Monday, Hurricane Florence continued to move west-northwest across the central tropical Atlantic near 16 miles per hour, with its forecast track heading in the general direction of Bermuda. According to the National Hurricane Center NHC Miami, a westward to west-northwestward motion is expected to continue through Thursday morning. Maximum sustained winds have increased to near 65 miles per hour with higher gusts. Some additional strengthening was expected later on Monday. That's actually late on Monday, followed by slow weakening trend starting today. Winds from the Category 1 hurricane will extend outward up to 60 miles per hour from the center. Out of St. Lucia, long-standing allegations of corruption involving government ministers and other officials in St. Lucia and the South Florida businessman have attracted the attention of the widely read Florida newspaper, the Miami Herald. In a lengthy article on Monday, Herald reporters Adriel Kaplan and Aaron Lubowitz described how Antonio Asenza, who came to the United States from Venezuela in 1990, became tangled up in a corruption scandal involving a proposed $157 million redevelopment project at Hewanorua International Airport HIA in Vieux-Fort, St. Lucia in 2009. In 2014, the government of St. Lucia requested assistance from the United States in relation to a criminal investigation into suspected bribery regarding the airport redevelopment project. The targets of the investigation were initially said to be Asenza and Guy Joseph, St. Lucia's current Minister for Economic Development, Housing, Urban Renewal, Transport and Civil Aviation. And lastly, in our regional news segment, out of Dominica, the Ministry of Tourism and Culture and the Air Access Committee of Discover Dominica Authority have successfully negotiated an additional 2,016 seats into the destination from 2 new flights added by Air Antilles starting later this year. The flights will commence on November 1st, departing Pointe-à-Pitre for Dominica at 9:30 p.m. on Thursdays and Sundays and returning to Pointe-à-Pitre on the mornings of the following days. The flights will terminate for the season on March 29, 2019. During this period, a total of 42 flights will operate on the ATR 42 with capacity of 48 passengers, allowing for movement of up to 2016 in and 2016 out of Dominica. These flights allow travelers to connect from several international flights. Additionally, Air France will offer a code share with Air Antilles. With the introduction of the new service, travelers to Dominica will have same-day connections and have same-day access from JFK into Dominica via connections with the low-cost carrier Norwegian Airlines, as well as same-day connections from Europe, particularly France, at reasonable rates from airlines departing from Paris-Orly. And that's our regional news segment. Stay with us for news around the world. Welcome back and now on to the international news. Russian warplanes have reportedly bombed the rebel-held Syrian province of Idlib as government troops mass ahead of what may be a major offensive. If confirmed, there would be the first such airstrikes there in 3 weeks. Earlier, U.S. President Donald Trump warned Syria's Bashar al-Assad against launching a reckless attack on Idlib. Tom Bateman reports.
Hilltops and the edges of villages were hit in a wave of air raids in western Idlib, the first of their kind in 3 weeks, said to have been carried out by Russian warplanes. The Syrian government has been amassing troops for what is described as a phased offensive against Syria's last remaining rebel stronghold. Opposition groups backed by neighbouring Turkey, as well as Islamist militants linked to al-Qaeda, have said they will fight back. There are around 3 million people in the province, many of whom were displaced as the Syrian government recaptured other rebel areas and who now have nowhere left to go.
Japan has been hit by its strongest typhoon in 25 years, causing at least 6 deaths and 160 injuries. Typhoon Jebi made landfall in western areas, bringing heavy rain and reports of winds of up to 172 kilometers per hour. In Osaka Bay, it swept a tanker into a bridge, and in Kyoto, parts of a railway station roof came down. Officials ordered more than 1 million people in affected areas to evacuate their homes amid warnings of high waves, flooding and mudslides. It has already left tens of thousands without power, and authorities have urged people to move to safety. The Libyan authorities say heavy clashes between rival militia factions in Tripoli have forced nearly 2,000 families to flee their homes. Around 50 people have been killed during the fighting. More in this report.
More than a week on since the violence erupted on the streets of Tripoli, the authorities there and humanitarian agencies are beginning to count the cost of this latest rival militia conflict. Libya's Ministry of Displaced People's Affairs says over 1,800 families have been displaced from 7 areas in the capital. The Libyan authorities also say that over 2,000 distress calls were made to emergency services. The UN has described the situation as volatile and unpredictable, making it hard for humanitarian agencies to reach people trapped by the fighting.
And lastly, in our international news segment, a section of a bridge has collapsed in India's eastern city of Kolkata, and a number of people are feared trapped. 1 person died and several others were injured, local media reports say. Rescue teams and the army have been deployed to help pull out those who could be under the rubble of the Meja-Hat bridge. The bridge stood over rail tracks in an old part of the city. It was not immediately clear what had caused the structure to partially collapse. Footage on local TV channels have shown a bus, a few cars and some motorcycles stuck in the caved-in section of the bridge. And that brings us to the end of our news segment. The latest in sports is next.
TDC, and you have VIP access to TDC Home and Building Depot's Furniture Fest. Get 25% off all furniture cash or hire purchase and save even more on our Furniture Fest cash specials. After all that fetting, come home and relax in affordable quality, comfort, and style. Pay your way and save big on your living room, dining room, or bedroom set in TDC Home and Building Depot's Furniture Fest. See stores for details. Terms and conditions apply.
If you come to fest, I come to fest, she come to fest, we come to fest. All are we.
Welcome back, and now on to the sports. In football, Manchester United manager Jose Mourinho has reached a deal with the Spanish state on a 1-year suspended sentence in a long-running tax fraud case, Spain's El Mundo newspaper reports. The Portuguese national was also fined about €2 million, it says. He was accused of owing nearly €3.3 million in undeclared image rights revenue for 2011 and 2012 when he was Real Madrid manager. Richard Conway reports.
Jose Mourinho was accused by the Spanish tax authorities of using offshore companies to conceal some of his image rights earnings when he was the manager of Real Madrid. Spanish media is today reporting he has been fined 60% of the money involved. A possible prison sentence has been averted, given his acceptance of the sanction. The Manchester United boss appeared before a court near Madrid last year and said afterwards he considered the case closed and he would pay what he owed. Spanish authorities have aggressively pursued a number of individuals within the football industry in recent years, with the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi also paying hefty fines for tax evasion.
In CPL cricket, as the Caribbean Premier League CPL continues, tonight we will see the St. Kitts and Nevis Patriots going up against the Barbados Tridents at Warner Park in St. Kitts. Tomorrow evening, Wednesday, September 5th, the Trinbago Knight Riders will face the Guyana Amazon Warriors. The match will begin at 8 o'clock at the Queen's Park Oval in Port of Spain, Trinidad. In athletics, USA Gymnastics Chief Executive Kerry Perry has resigned just 9 months after taking up the role. She had been criticized for her handling of the fallout from the Larry Nassar abuse scandal. Former team director Nassar was jailed for life after being found guilty of abusing more than 250 athletes, including Olympic champion Ali Rezman. Perry's exit also comes after senior coach Mary Lake Tracy quit on Saturday, just 3 days into her role. Appointing Tracy to a senior coaching role angered some victims after the coach made comments in 2016 where she described Nassar as amazing. In NFL, an American football star who sparked a furor by kneeling during the national anthem has been unveiled as one of the faces in a major advertising campaign. Former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick is appearing in Nike's Just Do It 30th anniversary campaign. In 2016, Kaepernick refused to stand for the national anthem in protest at police violence against African Americans. Other players followed suit, but the protest has divided the country and sparked Donald Trump's anger. Kaepernick has not played in the National Football League NFL since last year and is suing the organization, arguing team owners deliberately froze him out because of his activism. And lastly, in our sports segment, in more NFL news, critics have burned Nike trainers and clothing in protest at Colin Kaepernick's appointment as the face of the brand's new advertising campaign. The American football quarterback 30 protest against racial injustice and police brutality by kneeling during the U.S. national anthem. In announcing the deal, Nike said he was one of the most inspirational athletes of this generation. However, opponents took to social media, promising to destroy Nike products. On Twitter, they hit out at the deal using the hashtag #JustBurnIt, a play on Nike's slogan Just Do It, which trended on Twitter alongside Boycott Nike. According to social media analyst site Spreadfast, there were more than 800 tweets using the hashtag #JustBurnIt in a matter of hours earlier today. And that's it for sports. The weather is next. Welcome back. Tonight's weather will continue to be fair to partly cloudy, with a 10% or a slight chance of showers. The winds are easterly with speeds ranging between 13 and 28 kilometers per hour, or 7 and 15 knots, with lighter spells at times. The seas are slight to moderate, with significant wave heights not exceeding 1.5 meters or 5 feet. The sunrise tomorrow will be at 5:58 a.m. And that's how we wrap up the major news package for today, Tuesday, 4th September 2018. Before we go, let's take a look at the headlines once again. Nationally, CFBC student wins Six Senses Range Development's internship in the Seychelles, and Nevis's premier says there is a shortage of nurses at the Alexandria Hospital. Regionally, Union rejects Trinidad Prime Minister's refinery purchase offer. Internationally, Russian warplanes bomb Syria's Idlib. And in sports, Jose Molino gets suspended jail sentence for tax fraud. On behalf of the rest of the news team, I am Jarvis Brown wishing you a pleasant evening.